name's Andrea. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new here. Today I wanted to talk about something that I honestly haven't told a lot of people, and that is my mental health story. Before we get any farther into this video, I just want to say that I am not a mental health professional. Everything that I say in this video is based solely on my past experience and opinion, so please keep that in mind as you're watching the rest of this video. And also, I want to put a trigger warning and let you know that I am going to be talking about mental health, but more specifically depression, anxiety, self-harm, and a little bit about grief and death. So if any of those things are at all triggering for you, please don't watch this video. Go ahead and click out. I want this video to be inspiring and show you that there are hard times and that you can get through them. So I don't want to say anything at all that will trigger you. So if you don't feel comfortable watching this video, I completely understand. Do what's best for you and don't watch this video. So now I want to hop into my mental health story. So I also have a whole entire page of notes so I don't lose my train of thought and can make sure I get everything in this video. So if you see me looking down, that's what I'm looking at, but I'm just going to go ahead and start off with kind of my timeline with mental health. So I would say I had a very good childhood. I had a pretty happy family. We went on a lot of trips together, did a lot of things together. My parents are still together. I have 4 siblings, but mental health struggles do run in my family. So specifically my immediate family, basically every one of us has had our own journey with mental health. I would say as a kid, I was a pretty anxious kid. I was always worried about something, and I had a lot of irrational fears. So I remember being 6 years old and having nightmares that people were coming to kidnap me, and they were gonna take away this specific toy that I was obsessed with at the time. And as a little kid, I didn't really understand why I was having those nightmares, but nightmares like that had really irrational, drastic fears of someone I loved dying, someone close to me getting hurt, me dying, me getting hurt, anything like that, I always had really irrational fears about. I was also always a really big people pleaser, so I never wanted to get in trouble. I never wanted to be a part of anything that could get a whole group of us in trouble. I was always a pretty good kid as far as following the rules and making sure everyone else was following the rules, I guess. I would say that there were multiple situations that kind of led up to my mental health declining. And so I'm going to kind of briefly go through some of those big events that happened in my life that kind of led up to when things got really bad. So there was someone a part of my life that I had to see daily. I was kind of with them all the time, and they had a pretty negative impact on my mental health. It kind of went on ever since I can remember up until the time I was about 18. And there wasn't really anything I could do about it, so I kind of just had to deal with it and try to distance myself from that person. But since they were someone I saw every day, it was kind of hard to do that. So that was something that had a pretty negative impact on me from the time I was really young up until the time about my mental health really declining. Aside from that, there was a lot of other big life-changing events that happened in my life, kind of all around a similar time. In 2012, my grandma passed away from cancer. And I remember that being kind of the start of when I really understood my emotions and kind of went through my first time losing a grandparent, what grief was like, and just kind of had to be in tune with my emotions and kind of understand why I was feeling the way I was. Obviously, when you lose someone when you're little, it's kind of a complicated situation because I never remember knowing how sick she really was. My family didn't really tell the younger kids grandma's not doing good, she's going to die. It was more of oh, we know she has cancer, we know that's bad, but oh, she's gonna be fine, it's just, she's just sick, she just has cancer, it's bad, but you don't when you're 10 years old. And then it was all of a sudden a switch flipped and it was grandma died, she's not here anymore, we're going to her funeral now. And I don't really remember there being much of a leading up to the point of her passing. It was more of grandma's fine and then she wasn't. That's kind of when I started realizing that I was really anxious all the time. I was really sad and upset for a lot of different reasons. After my grandma passed away, there was actually a few other deaths that happened around the same time. There was my granny actually had a stroke and she was really sick, so I ended up basically moving to Texas for like a month with my mom to help take care of her. And in that timeline of things, my grandpa actually had a unexpected heart attack and passed away. And so then we had that passing, and then my granny ended up passing away. There was a couple people in my life that ended up walking out or passing away as well, all kind of within the years of like 2012 to like 2016. And then we get to high school, and that's kind of when everything, I think, really started to go down. I had been dealing with that same person daily ever since I was little. And then on top of all of those deaths that kind of happened pretty like 1 year after another, there was like another person that would leave or pass away in a pretty traumatic way. So I felt like by the time high school hit around, I was like so in tune with my emotions, but also there was just too many of them for me to even understand how to deal with. So things started getting pretty bad, but honestly it wasn't too bad yet. For context, I was homeschooled, so I was home with my family most of the time, but I was participating in a co-op, which is just a place where we met one day a week, and we had teachers that would like give us our assignments for the week, and then we'd do it at home with our mom or on our own or whatever that looked like. And I had been going to the same co-op from about like 2008, I want to say, like 2009 maybe, up until like 2018, 2019. So yeah, it was a pretty long time that I was with almost the exact same group of people as far as my classmates. There was like between like 8 to 12 of us that kind of went through each grade together from the time we were in like elementary school up until I stopped going in high school. So for the most part, I had a lot of friends. I had a lot of people that I was around that I liked and that I think liked me. And then I got into my first relationship, and it was with a guy that also went to that same co-op. And no shade, no tea, he was really, really sweet guy, first love, all that type of stuff. Everything went pretty well, except for the fact that being in such a small community, everyone kind of wants to know everything about everyone, and specifically the moms and the parents kind of all thought it was their role or their job to watch over me and watch over him and kind of just be eyeballing our relationship and pointing out anything and everything that we did that was maybe not in line with what they thought we should be doing. So that kind of took a toll on our relationship and my mental health, knowing that there was always people that were judging what I was doing and analyzing literally every single thing I ever did, whether it was what I was wearing, what I say, what I did, like literally anything and everything. They thought it was their job to correct me when it wasn't. So long story short, that relationship ended up ending, and once that relationship ended, there was a pretty big change in my life. Not only was I going through my first heartbreak and losing my first boyfriend and my first love and all that stuff, I also lost literally all of my friends. I don't know if it's high school, if it was these people, if it was the small community, whatever it was, there wasn't room for his friends and my friends because we were all one big group. So it was more of everyone kind of picked him to be in the friend group, and therefore I was kind of no longer a part of the whole community. I was kind of in a way outcasted, I guess, from the people that I once was really close with. So that was really difficult for me because not only was I still being really judged and analyzed and talked about and people spreading rumors and all that stuff, I was also dealing with the death of my grandpa at that around that same time, and my granny around the same time, and losing my first boyfriend and all of my friends. It was just a lot at one time, and it was honestly just kind of like a pretty unfortunate timeline of when everything started happening. So that is honestly when everything went really south. I got so anxious. I never wanted to be around the same people that were at that school because I knew they were just judging me. I knew they were analyzing me. I knew everyone was talking about me behind my back and or talking bad about me to my face. People would like just say and do a lot of really hurtful things. And I basically told my parents that I refused to go back. And of course, they didn't let that fly, and they were like, no, you still have to go to school. Like, you still have to go. And that caused a lot of kind of like fighting and anger between my parents and I, because I was like, no, like you don't understand, like I can't go there again, like I just can't do it. And they were like, no, like you don't understand, you have to go to school. So we went kind of back and forth on whether or not I was going to keep going to school or not, and ultimately they decided, no, you have to go back. So I told my mom that if she was going to make me go, I was going to make her go. So I told her, like, I'll go back, but like you have to come with me, and you have to sit in this classroom and feel the like hatred towards me and the like anxiety in the room and like all of the negative emotions, and like understand why exactly I don't want to go there again. So my mom ended up coming to school with me for a couple weeks, and after like the first day she was like, yeah, like we're gonna figure out something, because like I now understand why I don't want to go back. All these people are insane. So after she realized what was really going on there, I stopped going to the school for, I think it was probably like maybe 3 weeks, maybe like a month or two. And then they decided like, okay, like we still need to figure out what you're doing for school, because throughout that time I wasn't really doing any school. And I ended up being told that I had to go back to that same school. So not only was I struggling with a lot of anxiety and depression and self-harm at this time, I was also not doing well in school, because I was going so back and forth on whether or not I was even attending the school at all. So there were like weeks at a time where I wouldn't do school because I thought I wasn't doing their program, and then my parents would say, no, like you have to go back. And that I think happened maybe like 2 or 3 times of me like dropping out and then going back and then dropping out again and then going back. So that was kind of what was going on. And as far as how my mental health was during this time, it was probably the lowest it's ever been. I was trying to find literally anything and everything to fill that void in me. So I ended up getting in like a summer fling relationship, which only ended in more anxiety and more depression and more judgment from those people that were once in my life. And there was just a lot of negative emotions that I was feeling. I was probably having 5+ panic attacks a day. I wasn't sleeping. I remember staying awake, just like not being able to calm my mind down, or having a panic attack or self-harming or something up until like 5 o'clock in the morning, and then I would sleep until about 8 in the morning, and then I would just be awake for the rest of the day, and I would do my daily tasks and do what I had to do, and I just wasn't living a healthy lifestyle, and that really put a toll on my body and on my mental health. I don't honestly remember the first time that I started self-harming, but I would say it was probably around like 2014 maybe. Throughout all of those, the daily occurrences with that one person in my life and the grief I was trying to understand how to deal with, I turned to self-harm, and I started cutting myself probably, I don't even know, 100 times a day. Like it was really, really unhealthy, and I kept it a secret for I think a while. Honestly, I feel like that whole self-harm in this time of my life is kind of all a blur. I think I really blocked out some of the things I was feeling for like my own sake moving forward. So I honestly don't remember the first time that I cut or how I ended up telling my parents, but I remember going to my mom at some point. Honestly, I don't even know if I told her or if she found out. It's all a really big blur, but some way or another she found out that I was self-harming, and she immediately took me to the doctor. And like I said, since everything's such a blur, I don't really remember the timeline of this, but I think it was around like 2015, 2016. So she made me go to the doctor for just counseling to see what they thought I needed to do to get help, and I ended up going to see my first counselor, and at this point in my life I didn't want help. I didn't want to get better, and so I wasn't getting better. I put up a fight every time my mom told me it was time to go to counseling. I wasn't getting anything beneficial out of going to see this counselor. I didn't connect with the counselor. I didn't like her methods, and it kind of just comes down to I wasn't ready to receive the help. I wasn't ready to hear what she had to say, or her opinion on things. So I would just lie to her. I tell her I stopped cutting when I hadn't, tell her I was fine when I wasn't, and it just really wasn't getting anywhere. After probably like 6 months of being with that therapist, I ended up getting on medication. I got on a daily antidepressant, and I was also prescribed a like emergency panic attack medication. So it wasn't something I was supposed to take daily, but just something that could kind of basically knock me out when I started having a panic attack. I took the daily medication for probably like a year, maybe a year and a half, almost 2 years. And throughout that time is kind of when all the high school things were going on and everything was just kind of going south. Flash forward a little bit farther, I ended up meeting my now husband, and honestly, he met me at the worst time. That is when I was in the deepest parts of my self-harm and of my depression, and specifically anxiety. So that's kind of a little bit of a background of where my mental health was at throughout my like childhood into my high school years, but specifically the years probably 2017 to 2019, the beginning of 2019 were the hardest years. 5+ panic attacks a day, not sleeping, not having any type of healthy routine or habits. That's when I dropped out of school. I wasn't doing anything unless people made me, and it was just a really, really dark time in my life. I would say I kind of just had to get to the point where I didn't want to feel that way anymore for anything to change. I ended up telling my now husband, at the time I think we were just dating, I don't think we were engaged yet, but I told him like, I want you to come with me when I tell my parents that I need to go to the hospital. Like, I was at such a low part in my life where I didn't trust myself. And so he came with me and we went to my mom, and I just went up to her and I just cried and I said like, I need you to take me to the hospital like right now, or something really bad is going to happen. And she immediately got my dad and we all just kind of sat and talked. I was just kind of telling him like, no, like I really need help. Like, I want help now. All those past therapists, all that medication or whatever, like I didn't want it at that time. Like I didn't want the help, so I wasn't receiving any. And I basically just told them like, something has to change right now or something really bad's gonna happen. So they ended up calling an emergency hotline, and at this point I think it was like 10, maybe 11 at night, and an emergency therapist or like emergency mental health worker, I honestly don't even know kind of what her job really entails, but she just kind of came over and evaluated me, and collectively we decided that going to the hospital wasn't going to be my best bet. The thought of being like taken and isolated from people and not having contact to the only things that were comforting, which were my parents and my boyfriend, it made me freak out even more, and I knew that like it was not going to be good. If I went there, it wasn't going to make me feel better. I would just be freaking out until I got home, and then things would just be worse. So I ended up not going to the hospital that night, but I did get really closely monitored by my parents. I slept in their room. They wouldn't take their eyes off me, and I ended up like just going to see another therapist the next day and kind of figuring out what needed to change and what needed to happen. But that's honestly what it took for me to get better. I dropped out of that school, and not being around those people that were making me so anxious and being around the people that were criticizing me and judging me for anything and everything, that alone took away so much of my anxiety that I was holding in. And I had like such a big release of emotions when that happened, because I felt free from that part of my anxiety. I just know removing myself from that situation and being around those people was one of the most beneficial things that I did for my mental health. And I know that's not something that everybody has the privilege of doing, as far as removing the situations or the people in your life that are making you anxious or depressed or something like that. But if you are able to do that, I know for me that was one of the most beneficial things for my mental health. And that's kind of what my mental health journey has looked like up until about 2019. I just was at a really low spot, and the only thing that changed was that I was ready to receive the help I needed. Leading up to that point, I didn't want to hear what people had to say. I kind of was just stuck in the cycle of the anxiety and depression kind of just taking over my whole life and not being willing to feel any other type of way. It's kind of hard to explain, but if you've been there, then you know how, like, it's just a cycle. It's just, you have good days, you have bad days, but like, it's just, you can't get out of it, and it's a really hard thing to, in a way, like, snap out of feeling those things and having those habits. But for me, it was just, I had to hit rock bottom before I was ready to get better. Thankfully, I had a lot of support in getting better. My parents helped me find a counselor that I actually liked talking to, and I was willing to, like, be open to. My now husband was always really supportive. He would kind of help me talk myself down from certain emotions. He wouldn't judge me when I was feeling a certain type of way, and I just had to find the people that I really trusted, which was my now husband and my parents, to just tell them when I wasn't feeling okay. And that's what I just had to go through in order to get to that point. I had to find the strength within myself to want help and to want to get better. I want to talk a little bit about the coping mechanisms that really helped me and kind of the practices that I do now to keep me on the right path. As far as my mental health now, I am leaps and bounds happier and healthier than I was in those high school years, but I still have my moments. I think anxiety is just part of my personality at this point. I still get anxious. I still have panic attacks sometimes. Certain situations cause a lot of anxiety in me. Being around certain people cause a lot of anxiety in me. But not only do I know now the strength that I have within myself, I've also found, with the help of my husband and my family, coping mechanisms that I know will really help me when I'm in those kind of low moments. So first, journaling has been something that I've always done. It's been a place where I could be so myself, say whatever I want, and not feel ashamed of what I'm saying, because no one else was gonna see it unless I wanted them to. The other thing that I realized I really had to be aware of was what routine I was setting for myself. When I had no routine, I was not sleeping, I wasn't eating 3 meals a day, I wasn't drinking water, I wasn't moving my body. I was just kind of stagnant and just numb everywhere. And once I kind of got to the point where I was ready for things to change, I tried my hardest and still try to stay on a pretty consistent routine. So kind of planning my week ahead, knowing what's gonna happen. So if there is a situation that I know, hey, like, I'm gonna be around certain people that may make me anxious that day, like, I can kind of plan ahead and almost like prepare my mind and my body for those experiences. So planning ahead is something that really helps me stay kind of aware of what's going to happen to kind of prevent me from being caught off guard in an anxious situation. But even just having the routine of waking up at the same time every day, like eating breakfast and not skipping breakfast. I never used to eat breakfast. Doing something consistently and making those habits healthy really made a really big impact on my life. And then I kind of already talked about this one, but removing the people and the situations that cause a lot of anxiety in your life is probably the thing that made the biggest impact on my mental health for the better. So once I stopped going to that school and being around those people that were causing me so much anxiety and putting myself in situations that were harmful for my mental health, that caused so much relief from my anxiety. And once I got married and moved out of my parents' house and I was no longer around that person that was negatively affecting me daily, like, I felt so free and so much like relief from those anxieties and struggles that honestly caused the biggest impact on my mental health. I know it's not like feasible for everybody to do, but if there is a way for you to remove those people and those anxieties out of your life, don't don't waste any time. Just get away from those things and surround yourself with people and situations that make you happy and feel more connected with yourself and with them, and just like all the good things. Surround yourself with positivity. I genuinely believe that like the emotions and the energy that you're surrounded around is what will impact you the most. So if you surround yourself with really negative people and put yourself in really harmful situations consistently, you're going to be a really sad, negative person. But if you surround yourself with happy feelings, happy thoughts, happy people, like ultimately it's going to affect you in a positive way. And I think the biggest thing that I had to learn was to not be ashamed of my mental health journey. I kind of grew up in a community where nobody talked about mental health. Everybody struggled with it, but everybody brushed it under the rug and kind of just didn't talk about it. No one said anything. I never heard adults really like saying things, and if it was like to one person in the corner of the room, like, shh, don't tell anybody that this person's struggling or whatever. It was just a very taboo topic that nobody wanted to confront, and I don't think that that is necessarily a very healthy thing. I think that mental health struggles are so common and they shouldn't be something you should be ashamed of. If you struggle with anxiety or depression or self-harm or an eating disorder or literally anything, like, you're not alone, and you shouldn't be made to feel like you're in the wrong or like you're crazy because you're struggling. Like, I guarantee the person that's judging you probably has similar thoughts and similar feelings. They just aren't aware and aren't willing to kind of deal with those emotions. So just knowing that I wasn't alone and that I had nothing to be ashamed of. I'm not ashamed that I've struggled with self-harm. I'm not ashamed that I've been on medication. I'm not ashamed that I have had a billion panic attacks in the past 10 years. Like, I'm not ashamed of that. That is my journey and that's my story. And once I got to the point of not being ashamed is when things really started to look up. I feel like I have the ability to help inspire others who maybe don't have families that are supportive, or maybe don't have a community that is open about mental health awareness, and maybe you're made to feel like you're going crazy, or maybe your family doesn't believe in medication and they don't want to put you on medication because they think it's just numbing the pain and not fixing the problem. Like, whatever it looks like you're not alone and you're not going crazy. Like, the things that you're feeling are valid, but you have to find the strength within yourself to want the help to get better. People can tell you all the things they want to say, people can give you all the tips and tricks that they can, but until you're ready to hear those things and to put those things into practice, it doesn't matter what anybody says. So that's a little bit about my mental health journey, and there's a million more things that I could have said to talk about this topic, but that's just kind of where I'm going to leave it for now. If you guys have any questions about something that I talked about in this video, or maybe want me to go into more depth about a certain situation or something like that, like, please feel free to let me know. I'm not ashamed, and I'm happy to talk about things that maybe people don't hear a lot of people talking about, because there's nothing to be ashamed of. And if someone wants to judge me or judge you for something that we went through and came out of, like, that's on them, and they can do that, because everyone's entitled to their own opinion. But I know I have had the strength to get through a really dark time in my life and come out happier and healthier and stronger and willing to help other people, and I don't think that's anything to be ashamed of, and you shouldn't either. If anything I said today resonated with you, and you're dealing with any of the things that I have dealt with and still deal with daily, you're not alone. And if you need to talk to somebody, please feel free to reach out to me. But if you feel like you need serious medical attention, please go get that help. And hopefully you don't have to hit rock bottom to realize that you're stronger than these demons inside, and you can be willing to hear the truth and find the strength within yourself to get better before you hit rock bottom. But if that's what it takes, like, I did it and so can you. And I believe in all of you guys, and you guys are all amazing and strong and beautiful and wonderful. And I'm really glad that we got to have this conversation today. If you guys have any other topics of mental health that maybe you haven't heard people talk about and you want my opinion on, or like I said, more in-depth stories of what I've gone through in the past, please feel free to reach out to me or leave a comment down below. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video and kind of getting to hear a little bit more about me, and I hope this inspires you guys to know that like if you are going through a dark time, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. You just have to be strong enough and willing enough to get there. So please feel free to reach out to me. I can't wait to talk to you guys again, and I guess I'll just see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.